这个念头一直不会出现。
这篇主教堂它的地位很崇高吗？
对，因为它是直接代表神。它可以直接住。
那你对于就是大家就是高潮的时候会抬头美到这件事情，有没有这个特别不好？
不会啊，因为祷告所以会达到高潮。
就是吗？
祷告。其实都是一种爱，对，都是一种爱。
那为什么不能够？它的差别是什么？
好问题。
Good afternoon. I hope you're okay. Holding down to your breath. Today before I introduce Jiwon, let me say a few words. Today we're working into this unit called Division is Overcoming. So back to sort of the first section on the Yingzhen, and this one should be one unit. These are the issues, very, very locally situated, right? And on the surface, it's only unique to Korea and so on. Right? But I hope eventually you will find something beyond that. Right? I guess I'm trying to say, even like yesterday when we talked about Takeuchi or Misoguchi, from my understanding, you can't really directly apply them. Apply is probably not the right word, right? But how do you think with? How can be sort of inspiration to tackle the issue you want to, you're interested in, or opened up kind of new possibilities to ask questions. So I think with the same thing with the issue of the division, and I actually said from the first day in my own presentation, I think eventually Jiwon put that well. Like in not only Taiwan Strait, right, Okinawa, Hong Kong, North and South Korea, this is not the real contradiction going on, real problem going on. So how do you tackle the real issue? And perhaps new questions and new knowledge will be generated because of the urgency of the problem. So I think that's one point I want to suggest to you. And the second point is in terms of the group discussion and so on. By now, I hope whatever your teammate, right? And I'm actually hoping more senior students, right? Some of you are more senior than others. Some are first year MA, right? So I'm hoping the senior student can also help out. Not only in terms of structuring the thought, but also clarifying certain things if you do understand better. Right? As I said from the very beginning, this is a mutual support study group rather than competition. Right? So I hope that will continue to move on. Today, Professor Chio Wakabayashi is, I think she's, because of typhoon, she's flying from Okinawa, supposed to be landing 1:30, right? So I'm hoping the flight will be landing on time. We may have to, restructure the format, right, with certain flexibility. So we may discuss after Jiwon's presentation. We'll see how things evolve. How do I introduce Jiwon? Jiwon is formally, I think she works in the Institute for Peace and Unification with the Seoul National University. And prior to that, she was in Yonsei University or Korean Study Institute and so on. I first met her in Yonsei University 2000, early 2000, 2001, 2002, she was finishing her PhD. And she's very, very, how should I say, resourceful. At one time, during the Modern Asian Soul project happening in Seoul, I saw her literally translating among 3 languages, simultaneous translation. Not only, of course, Korean, right? Japanese and Chinese, right? So I think at least in Northeast Asia, only Korean friends can do it. Anyone else can do this? Raise your hand. From Northeast Asia, right? But today, she will speak. She seldom speaks in English, right? So she's taking up the task to help herself without having to mediate to other languages. In terms of her own research, I think she was basically trained in the modern Chinese intellectual history or history of thought. Right? And you can also talk to them more about this. And she's coordinating a lot of activity among the younger generation scholars within Modern Asian Thought Project. Right? So I'm personally very grateful to one coming to help us. Right? And without further ado, let's welcome Siwon.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, as I just was introduced, my name is Jiun, and I just arrived the day before yesterday, and so it's too bad I haven't been attended your other classes. So, but I just heard that from other professors that you are just all the students are really well prepared and really active and really intelligent. So I hope, although despite that, so I just heard that there have been some difficulty to understand because of just the different. Can you hear me?
It's okay. Keep talking.
Yeah. So because you all just are from different intellectual context or disciplines, so today I am going to the presentation I am going to make is just about division system theory proposed by a Korean scholar Baek Chung. So I wonder just how many students are familiar with this discourse theory. So I just assume that basically just little of you just are familiar with that. So so Chiyo probably are focused on the introduction and or interpretation of the division system theory from Japanese or Okinawan perspective. So I guess my job is just to explain the original background from the why or how come this discourse just formed from the Korean intellectual background. So and then I'll just try to make discussion how we can just apply this concept or this discourse to just our issues to just facilitate understanding better understanding of East Asia. So to just as far as my knowledge for better understanding of the division system theory, we have to go back to the 1970s. So in the Korean intellectual background, the 1970s of maybe 1960s. So 1960s or 1970s is very important. So I'm going to just start with the national literature movement in 1970s, and then I will just move to 1980s, and then 1990s. So from 1970s and to 1990s, for 30 years, Korea just to experience just outstanding or just enormous social change. So division system discourse is just made among this kind of very in this social background. So first I just to explain the background of division system, and then the next part just I will focus on why the national literature discourse turned into a division system theory, and then I'll just to focus on the framework and just go in deeper about the Professor Baeknat Chungju's thought. And the last part, I want to just make a discussion just about how we rethink this division system theory or division system discourse from the Asian perspective. So, okay, so let's just go one by one. So it is very important to understand the social background in 1970s. So maybe some of you just may have heard the April 19 revolution in 1960. So at that moment we had the Lee Seung-man regime, so kind of nepotism. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So there was the timetable, and just we are going to the first part. So April 9th revolution is raised in 1960. So at that moment we had Lee Seung-man regime, just Lee Seung-man nepotism, and at that moment we had big student or civilian revolution, and just to bring the Lee Seung-man regime down. And then we had the just famous Park Chung-hee nepotism just begins. So during the Park Chung-hee regime, although Korea just had been through very difficult despotism, but also we made outstanding economic growth. So there was also ambivalence. On the one side, politically very dark era, but on the other side, economically, Korea made a lot of just growth. So in that kind of ambivalence, so student movement or just resistance movement against Park Chung-hee despotism regime was very affluent. So among that kind of social atmosphere, the democratic requirement from wide range of social strata just emerged as a name of the nationalist movement. So some of you might be interested why did that kind of movement emerged as a name of nationalist movement, not democratic movement or other kind of some socialist movement. So that is a very important thing to understand Korean intellectual background. So why nationalism? So there are some reasons. So the first one is a lot of intellectuals or movement subjects, they were aware that the fundamental factor suppressing democracy of South Korea actually is the division between North Korea and South Korea. So because anti-communism is the main ideology of the government at the time. So, and the other one, of course, there are many left-wing intelligence, but they couldn't use people, the term of people, because the term of people could be regarded as left-wing or classic concept. So because of the political, the political atmosphere, they have to use, although their maybe real concept might be people, but they had to use nation. So that is more safe, politically safe. And the second reason, so there is a necessity of forming a united front. So because Korea just have been through the Korean War and there are many just tragedy between left wing and right wing for a long time. So ideology is very sensitive. So some intellectual might be. So that's why. So it's very sensitive. You know, if you are right wing or left wing, or you're so. If you just use nature, so nature is the only term just where all stratum of intellectual, all stratum of people just can get together. So that is one of the main reasons. And there is another factor is the opposition to the Westernism. So in the 1960s, I say just Westernism or Americanism was very. I keep making the same mistake. So we are going to the last reason, the opposition to the Westernism. So in 1960s, so Korean society was hugely Westernism has permeated the Korean society. So so Americanism or American dream or American culture was very popular. So against that kind of mainstream of cultural mainstream, so intellectuals and resistance movements like opposed to that kind of Westernism. So in 1960s or 1970s, so poem in Korea, among the Korean cultural movement, poem was very active and very popular. So I just named some very popular title of poem like Four-Way Cross or just Yellow Earth or just Farmer's Dance. As you can see from the title, so the nationalism was very deep in the poem. There was the there was the 1970s. So now we move on to 1980s. Now we move on to 1980s. So 1980s, although the same military regime continues, but there are a lot of huge changes in Korean society. So the first new military regime begins. So as some of you may know, so 1979, so Park Chung-hee was assassinated, and then just a new coup d'etat happened, and then new military regime just begins. And another very important thing is the 1980s Gwangju Revolution. So this is very huge, huge event in Korean democratic history. So a lot of students were just there were just a huge amount of massacre happened. So from Gwangju in 1980s, the student movement reached its peak. So this is kind of also the political darkness. But on the other hand, as in 1970s, so in 1980s, we also made this outstanding economic growth. So this economic growth, but also facilitated the labor movement too. And then on the background of this, so in 1987, so June uprising, so June 29th, the uprising just happened. It was very huge like mobilization. So there were 50,000 people just gathered in the city hall, and they just made a huge demonstration. And then so this just basically led to democracy era in Korea society. And then another thing we have to consider is the international environment which has been changed. So there was Seoul Olympic in 1988. I just heard from former official that Korea government may have just crushed down the June uprising in 1987, but they didn't. They couldn't because of the Olympic of the next year. So in some way, just the Olympic or just international environment just helped facilitate Korean democratic development. So on the background of this environment, so new cultural movement also became very active. So I call it just a movement era. So I kind of forgot to explain this background of Baek Nak-jung's national literature. So to explain his, so there is a quarterly Changbi is very important. He just built this journalist, and then it's in 1960s, and he started his critique just on the basis of this genre. So, but this genre was forced to stop issuing from 1980 to 1988 for 8 years by government. So basically in 1960s or 1970s, so Changbi and another, Changbi is basically leading the cultural intellectuals society. But during the 1980s, it just stopped. But paradoxically, these things just resulted in abundance of cultural movement and just diversity of cultural movement. So this year, so because issuing the periodical journal is basically impossible because of the government. So this time it's just MOOC, just unperiodical journals were very popular. So So in this background, just a new arena of literature movement is just widely opened, and just new literature agenda just proposed instead of just national literature. So many young critics proposed just a diversity of just literary agenda or cultural agenda, such as popular national literature or popular democratic literature, labor liberation literature, national liberation literature. So as you can see from their name of the agenda, they were very radical, so a lot more radical than national literature. So they basically criticized Changbi or Professor Baek Nak-jung, that Professor Baek Nak-jung is basically just petit bourgeois literature nationalist, and they just put forward the partisanship of worker class as the crux of new literature movement. So in this active radical movement, so Changbi basically Changbi or national literature discourse had a big crisis. And then now we move on to 1990s. So another paradox happened in 1990s. The prosperity of the cultural movement in 1980s paradoxically led to the decline of the social movement. So this is the important thing. So in 1990s, just suddenly all the social movement or cultural movement just has declined. So there are some background. So the first one is the existing socialism just demise. And the second one is, after the June uprising in 1987, Korea is basically just moved to a democratic society. So, and then just on the basis of economic growth, so just expand middle class just has been expanded. Why do they expand it? And then as a result of the June uprising in 1987, so Korea basically military regime just came to an end, and the establishment of the civilian regime just established in 1993 for the first time. So basically in 1990s, Korea just became politically just democratic society, and at the same time just economically it's very wealthy, well-being society. So in that basis, so then new agenda for the new phase of the social movement required. So no national, none of the so not only the national movement, national literature movement, but also other radical national movement agenda just lost their meaning in this changed society. So now we are moving to part 2. So in this changed social atmosphere, so social movement has to find a new path. So not socialistic or not nationalism. So we need to find a new way. So that is the main context to how the division system discourse came out. So as I said, the new socio-political condition after 1987 required new agenda of social movement. So not socialism, not nationalism. So neither national literature discourse nor the other radical discourses are functional anymore. So at this time, so Professor Beck just proposed division system theory at this point. Although he already started writing some essays or articles about division system in early 1980s, but this time he just proposed it officially. So, for example, in 1992, Changbi quarterly they just featured the new search of the index of thought and the changing condition or the vision of the reunification movement. So let's move on the theoretical framework of the division system discourse. So the first important occasion is the social formation debate from the mid-1980s. So during the student movement atmosphere, there is a big debate about social formation of Korean society. It called so on the one side there is a nationalism. Some people just suggest national liberation is the most important task of the South Korea, and the other one just says popular democracy is the most important task. So, facing this kind of debate, so Professor Peck started thinking. So, both sides are having just to combine themselves to half nation perspective. So they don't consider the whole Korean peninsula. They kind of assume that South Korea is just a self-combined, self-enclosed unit. So he started to propose that we need to move from half nation perspective to one nation perspective. So a little difficult to explain. So let me put like this. So among the 1980s, so when the radical movement, young critics who were really young radical critics criticized Baek, so their main point of being critical of Baek Nak-chung was that Professor Baek is lack of class concept. Because basically they just thought Professor Baek is basically petit bourgeois nationalist. So for Professor Baek, so how to face the class concept, class issue is a really important thing. So at this moment, so in 1990s when he proposed the division system theory, so he said with the half nation perspective of Korean Peninsula, so class is not the accurate analytical unit to analyze the whole reality of the Korean society. So we need the whole one nation peninsula perspective to analyze the Korean reality. So I think from the face of the national literature to the face of division system discourse, how to face the attack of his being lack of class conceit. It's very important to him. So in some way we might say we might be able to put that he just replaced, or I don't know if I can put it like this. He put the class issue, replaced the class issue with the division issue. So he just put the division issues above the class issue. So, of course, this also explains that his critical distance from the socialism. So, because in the 1980s, all the Korean intellectual movement is based on the socialistic vision. So, socialistic vision. But he, just from 1960s, so from the beginning, I think he never believed, or he never truly trusted on the socialist vision. He thinks this is not realistic. So. So, and then the another important factor of the division system theory is the world system theory of Immanuel Wallerstein, as you also very well aware of. So he said that the Korean Peninsula division system, he put the Korean Peninsula division system as a subsystem of the modern world system. So at this point, what is important is that in the 1970s or in the 1980s, let alone national literature or other liberation, other radical literature, they don't have any vision beyond the nation state. So not even nation states, their vision is just confined to just South Korea. So at this point, so Professor Baek proposed we need to go beyond the nation state. We need to look at the world system. So otherwise we cannot analyze the Korean reality. So that is so in that case, in that way, world system theory of Wallerstein just to played a very big role in conforming his division system theory. So one thing we have to think that, so let's see the outlet of the national literature. There is another critic in Changbi Group. So Professor Choi Won-sik once just we was last year we had some interview. So he we asked to just speak about national literature movement. So, and at that time he said that like this. So there was no way out to outer world in the national literature in 1970s. And in the late of 1970s, the third world theory is raised. So in the 1970s, not only in Korea, maybe in Japan or in Taiwan, the third world theory is very kind of popular in the I think Chio is going to mention this again, and I believe Mr. Ikegami already mentioned this third worldism in 1970s. So Korea also, we have big third world literature was a third world theory wave in 1970s. So so at that moment, the outlet of the national literature finally opened up. So, but it was a very short moment. And then so after in 1990s, the national literature theory needs to change itself. So we really need to way out or window to go over the national scope. So the third part is the dual project, which is also an important factor of in terms of the theoretical framework of the division system. So let me put like this: there's a division system and national literature and the dual project. This triangle is the main framework of the division system theory. So, a dual project means that overcoming the modernity and adjusting modernity. So this is kind of the controversial concept. So why did he say a dual project? So overcoming modernity and adjusting to modernity. Sometimes I also am not just fully understand, especially adjusting to modernity. So overcoming modernity that's relatively easy. So we have to overcome the modern society. But why do we have to adjust to modern society? This part, so at this part, he has received many attacks or criticism. So I just explained I just tried to explain why he just said this dual project. So in my understanding, so he has a consistent theoretical frame that was so. He just tried to go over the class movement in 1980s or in 1990s. So the class contradiction. So in 1980s, a lot of radical intellectuals proposed class contradiction is the main contradiction of the Korean Peninsula, but he opposed to this. He didn't agree with this. So he said I think the class contradiction concept based on socialist vision in the past, in the 1980s, is too vague to analyze the reality of Korean Peninsula. And then the other one is we need to have the global vision. So without the correct understanding of the reality of the world system, the future Korean society cannot be discussed in a right way. So in this context, the global vision means that capitalism. So what he tried to say is we are living in capitalism or capital society. So just overcoming the capitalism is not that easy. which was the main target of the socialism, but socialism just ended up failure. So we have to just adjust or accept that we are living in the capitalism, and division system is also part of the capitalism or global capitalism. So unless we just accept, I know just to say accept is kind of controversial, but let's just put it like this. So unless we just accept we are living a subsystem of the world system or capitalism, we cannot start any kind of sustainable social movement. So if we just try just go over the existing reality, we cannot do any the movement, social movement cannot be sustainable like the socialist movement has failed. I think that's the gist or main point of the dual project. So on one hand we have to try to overcome the existing system, but on the other hand we have to just to put our feet on the existing reality. So and another factor which just played an important role in forming the division system theory is a debate about realism and modernism, which is held in 1990s in Korean intellectual society. At this debate, so Professor Beck made major contribution to just understanding of modernism or postmodernism. On this debate in 1990s, he basically support or just suggest that realism is the most important and most higher value, so rather than modernism or postmodernism. So it is hard to just to recapitulate this debate. So let's just skip. I will just put it like this. For him, the modernism is just overcoming the capitalism. So in this part, he is kind of dependent of Frederick Jameson's frame. So modernism, realism is realism versus capitalism. The modernism pre-capitalism. Modernism is after capitalism. So he says because we are living in the capitalism society. So sustaining or keeping realistic attitude is the most valuable thing. So as you can see, he has some consistency his framework from the national literature to the division system. There was the critical sense of distance from socialism. So in 1990s, when the intellectual mood has enormously changed, he just proposed an article, just very important article titled "For the Age of Wisdom." So at that, in that article, he mentioned the sense of he tried to keep distance from socialism. So socialism is not our vision of new social movement. So and he said how to keep distance of the socialism and then just to try to find the sustainable or the more meaningful movement for a better world. So, but this kind of concept or this kind of idea actually goes back to citizen literature, which is proposed by Baek Na-sung in 1960s. So he started his critiques with citizen literature, not national literature. So at first he proposed citizen literature, and then he just got a lot of criticism from other intellectuals because citizen literature that basically came from the French Revolution, and then it's based on the idea of just the petit bourgeois, just background. So after a lot of criticism and after a lot of discussion, so he just adjusted his idea of citizen literature into a national literature. That was in 1970s and 1980s, and but if we just look back the whole 30 years of his just intellectual thought, in some way he has just a consistency from citizen literature and natural literature and division system. So yes, I will just skip like this. And so in an article which is written in 1960s, in early time of his early time, he mentioned this kind of phrase like unfinished revolution or unknown man. So it means that let's go back to the this is so. Let me just quote some phrase from his article in 1966. So I think this is the first article. So I will just briefly read this quotation. So the citizen, as an idea for our future, while it is in pursuit of spirit of a citoyen of French Revolution, but still accepts the historical inevitability for the citoyen to become petit bourgeois. Therefore lies in the basis of the inevitability is an unknown or unfinished man whom we have to fight for and create. So what is the meaning of the unknown and unfinished man whom we have to fight for and create? So this is the when I read the article and I gave you for the reading of this class, so you might remember this. There is a term like daily practice or just everyday tasks. So, in my understanding, so unfinished revolution or unknown man whom we fight for, and daily practice or everyday tasks, there are some consistency over relationship. So basically the daily practice for the overcoming the division system as a mediating term between everyday tasks and the long-term agenda of overcoming modernity. This is the latest concept he proposed, but this actually goes back to the unknown revolution as he proposed in 1960s. So this is my understanding. So finally, let's go to some questions. So what kind of question we can make about this division systems? So there are many criticism already made toward against the Professor division system in Korean by several Korean intellectuals. So one of the common criticism is division system theory is too inclusive. So people just complain that is the idea concept of the division system really connected with all kinds of social issues of Korea. The first article we gave, so he proposed that like a feminist movement or some gender movement, classical movement, or environment movement, or needs to be connected to division system and overcoming division system. Otherwise, it couldn't gain any meaningful meaning. So about this kind of about this, as many intellectuals just made the question: is it really this kind of is it too inclusive? And the second common criticism is division system theory is too dependent on the world system theory of Immanuel Wallerstein. So maybe I can make this. So I made some questions like this. If the division system is not a self-complete system, as Professor Beck said, but a subsystem of the world system, then what is the nature of the, how does he put the nature of the world system? So is the world system also self-complete or not? So if it's not, then how does the relationship between the world system and the division system operate? So we should think about, we can make this kind of question. And the third question I want you to consider is, although lately, so the third question is although Professor Beck lately has made some change in his thinking of regional thinking. So before that, before maybe 1990s, he was relatively strongly opposed to East Asian or regional thinking because he thinks that unlike the division system, so region like East Asia or just Asia is not the analytical unit. That's basically his thought. But lately, I think he's been changing. He's been through some kind of changes. But still, division system theory just shows some lack of regional thinking, especially when he say one nation thinking. The division system as one nation thinking is a mediating term between half nation and world system. So in this case, half nation means South Korea, and one nation means the Korean Peninsula and world system. So Asia is missing, or regional concept is missing. So then how can we just enlarge this concept to, when we just consider the Asia or regional thinking? So is the division system the only subsystem of the world system, or one of the countless subsystems of it? So not only in Korean Peninsula. So like, can we put the relationship of mainland China and Taiwan and Hong Kong, or mainland? Can I say mainland, or just Japan and Okinawa? Can we put this relationship like a division system, or kind of different, not division, even though it's not division system, can we just put it just different kind of subsystems of world system? So if it's possible, in the case of the latter, if it's possible, then what kind of subsystem exists in the world, or what kind of subsystem exists in Asia? So, and then how are these subsystems, the different subsystems, Korean, maybe division system, we don't have to put it in division system, so it's happening in other area. So how are these subsystems interrelated with each other? So I think this is important thing to consider. And the last one, I need to focus on this concept, which I think is very important of the division system theory. So at first, I think Professor Beck has showing some change in his thinking. So if you read his article in 1980s or 1980s, you can find this kind of idea of compound state. So I read I don't remember the accurate title. So when the North Korea and South Korea just joined the UN in 1991, So at that time, in the 1991, he wrote an article about the joining of both Korea, the UN. He was basically seeing that negative in a negative way, because it means it's just kind of consolidating the division of the North Korea and South Korea. But now, later, his thinking has been changed. So now he thinks North Korea and South Korea don't have to be one state or one nation. So overcoming division system could be different way. Could be different way, not just forming one nation or one nation. So I just quoted some phrase from the article I gave, so I don't have to read this. So I think the idea of the compound state is very important. So I think we can just make some question to facilitate our thinking of East Asia like this. So would it be possible to apply this idea, compound state, the idea of the compound state, to other regions in Asia, such as Taiwan, Hong Kong, Okinawa? So those regions, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Okinawa, is very sensitive in terms of nation states. It's not, we cannot say it's a nation system, but we cannot negate it. We cannot just ignore it as a nation system. So how can we actually the compound state, the idea of the compound state, give us a variety of options to think about the existing way of some political entity. It doesn't need to be one nation state. So if so, then for this idea, compound state, to be meaningful, to build a better future of Asia, so what kind of modification would be necessary, and how can we just apply this idea to our existing Asian reality? Oh, yes. So that was my last question. So basically, yeah, this is my presentation. So yes, it's just 1 hour. So,
let me try to, I don't know, help a little bit as an outsider, right, of the Korean situation, but I'll supplement some points may be useful to situate. I think Juman asked you to read 2 articles, right? One is the overcoming division system. The other is actually the Baek Na-chong's kind of own intellectual biographical trajectory, how these come into being. Right? But why from national literature to division system? And I think Jiwon tried to situate the situation. If you bring in early on, right, like Chen Yingzhen, what I presented early on, why these people are doing literature, right? This is the dictatorship and martial law era, right? If you want to do social movement, forget it. You'll be arrested immediately. So how do you occupy a space to disseminate ideas? Right? So literature became the means. So how to occupy a cultural platform? That's when Changbi, in Mandarin it's called 创作与批评, 枪家花配用, right? Abbreviated as Changbi. Okay? So creation and criticism, I think, is in the 1960s. So Baek Na-chong basically have at least 2 heads, right? So on the one hand, he actually he started this journal in the 60s. Then when he said book, because it's suspended. And this is not only unique in Korea, in Taiwan, I don't know, maybe less so with Hong Kong. We have this MOOC thing. In other words, using It become now we call book series, right? But actually magazine type because it's difficult to register as periodical, right? You require different kind of license and so on, also with certain flexibility. That's how he started the literary journal as a form of intervention, but also start to produce this thing called national literature, right? But he himself said many, many times, he is not a nationalist, right? So these two are different terms. Right? You can do national literature, but you don't have to be a nationalist. Very, very self-aware the differences. So I guess that's why all these comes with the baggage or with the sort of, how should I say, realist agenda. How do you work effectively in the 1960s under dictatorship? Yes? So, for instance, the class issue involved, which cannot be uttered. Like in Taiwan, if you utter class, you belong to the North. Right? You understand what I'm saying? Right? So all these things, how do you twist around? So nation become, there was also a struggle over, with the mainstream culture and the state over the notion of the nation. So nation become a site for struggle. So they say we shouldn't give up this term, nation. Right? So that's why partly they entered the space. Right? Or earlier on, Jiwen tried to describe this as citizen literature to slide, right? And citizen seem to be a wider category, actually liberal category. So in that sense, I think Professor Beck is positioned as a sort of on the left, but not a hardcore leftist, so progressive side, all right? And then I think it's probably difficult, but also in a way, if you think this way, it's probably easier. For that generation intellectual, Professor Beck was born in the North, right? Yes, you know what I mean. Then moved to the South. These are the generation has tremendous aspiration for national integration because suddenly divided. Don't think from present point of view, right? Think in terms of Korean Peninsula in historical term. Let's not say too much. There's a whatever Yi dynasty going on already for 1,000 years. How many thousand years? Right, depends on, you know. So in other words, post-war division, half century is actually very, very short period of time. Yes? So for them, how do you think historically? If you think, you know, horizontally, you know, as a social scientific analysis, you think in terms of present. These are two separate societies. But when you think historically, this is already going on for 1,000 years and separating into two spaces. How do you think it as a whole? I think that's both sort of the sentiment built into it, but that also becomes the challenge of knowledge. How do you analyze two separated societies in one single frame? I think it's also, for me, I read it as a challenge on knowledge. Now, the third term, Jiwen already talked about. This is almost like Changbi developed this position, sort of, which is the question of adjustment and overcoming, right? So in other words, this is some sort of realist position. In order to deal with the reality, we have to adjust ourselves to it with an eye to overcome it, rather than say we need to overcome it to begin with. So this is a realist in the sense that I think you read the argument. They say to reintegrate, right? South Korea need to have a profound, solid economy, right? So economically, you have to be rich enough in order to work, right? If your economy collapse, there is no hope for doing things and so on. So I think this is the strategy they developed, not only in terms of, but any other sort of thing you have to work with, right? So in that sense, you have to adjust to, but also to overcome it, right? Because you know there's a problem with this, but you're not big enough to turn it overnight. So you have to work with it first. This is my own understanding. The more difficult part, I think, is the Chio just landed, is to explain to you what is this thing called the division system. But I think this essay provides some answer, right? And I don't know whether I want to summarize it. Otherwise, how do we go on for discussion? Do you have a rough understanding of this division system? Huh? Raise your hand. You have a rough understanding, right? No? No? Well, let me run the risk of this, sort of trying to simplify a little bit. This system is very fluid, but the system is historically constituted, so slowly coming into being after the Korean War, right? So there's a consolidation process, a rigidification process in the post-war era. How do I draw the picture? So at least there is this is a purely for heuristic value, right? So this is the part of the this is the global capitalist system, right? So in other words, the entire economic level operation is connected to that, right? And the mediation processes form the division system, and this is the nation state, the two separate states, including the society, social formation, right? So these things are somehow intermingled, form this layer called the division system, in the sense that this system self-reproduced, right? You read it. So I try to understand in my own term, like the cross-Taiwan Strait in the early era, there is a, how should I say, antagonism between the two states. And this antagonism, he suggested, actually consolidate the system in the sense that they are competing over, let's say, international arena, right? Representation. So this is where not only the capitalist system, but international system, he called interstate system, enter here to benefit from the contradiction. Right. So there is certain mechanism mutually supporting this antagonism. And in this process, slowly forming a mechanism called the division system, right? Separating the two formations, but also connecting them, you know, on a higher level, right? I don't know whether I'm making sense, but this is a dynamic process, also shifts in the historical process. So how do you overcome, meaning how do you, in his term, how do you dismantle the division system, right? Will be the key. I can't have better example just out of my head. Because slowly in the historical process already forming the system with certain mechanism built into it. How do you remove them, right? For instance, I'll give you kind of an empirical phenomenon. I use the example of a very concrete example. If you want to, let's say the Taiwan Strait used to be the case in the post-war era until 2008. There was no direct connection. I used the example last. Used to be we go through Hong Kong. Right? So that's already built into this division system. You cannot go across. Right? So he calls the shaking of the system. So some mechanism become loosened up. So when the direct flight, people-to-people communication or contact become to happen, the rigidity is loosened up according to this logic. So operate on various levels. Used to be there is no economic trade, right, or postal service. This is all part of the system to reproduce these differences. I guess that's so that's what I guess that the last point I want to suggest to you is coming back. Back Nacho, I said he put two hats. One is working from 1960 until now, at least what, 60 years, almost 60 years on the journal, right? But the journal by now is a huge publishing house, it's no longer a magazine. I told you from the very beginning, this is one of the, I don't know whether Korean friend knows this, is one of the largest journal on earth in terms of circulation, because you know 15,000 copy as a independent quarterly, not an academic association, right? Maybe numbers slowly coming down because accumulate is a readership. And then I think from 70s and 80s evolved into a huge publishing house. And by the way, Ji-Wen is on their editorial board. So publishing all kinds of literature, including children's literature. So he had one hat working in that space. The other hand, he actually from the 60s onward, he has been teaching literature in Seoul National University. So he is a university professor, right? What was his special author? I forgot his dissertation. Lawrence. So he's an English literature professor, but at the same time working on national literature, right? And so on. So he also developed all these perspectives on the what you call the planetary approach to literature and so on and so forth. So this is some people say this Changbi is not it's called Changbi block, a discursive block. They form, they work with, because they have certain continuity. So it's a controversial part, like a normal regime. So they actually develop a East Asian policy to relocate Korea. So they develop all these things along with, so journal become a vehicle for public debate and so on, and promoting their own position. So he doesn't simply work by himself, a group of people, including the Ji-Wen cites Professor Chen on the third world literature and so on. So this is a teamwork for the past 3-4 decades and so on. Okay, I stop here. How do we proceed? Theo just arrived. I said that he won't be able to arrive until 3 or something. Can I suggest we start the group discussion first? Huh?
I have a supplementary.
Huh? One done. I think we will get into public discussion later on. Okay? But this time, how do we? You want to supplement some information? Concept. Compound state.
It's not compound state. Compound political community.
Oh.
That's what he put
Yeah.
in his article.
It's a complicated thing with a compound state. And when he moved to Taiwan, I argued with him, why not compound society? All right. But in any event, how do you? I think the key is how do we move beyond existing formulation of the nation state to come up with other possibilities to overcome the current crisis, right? So can we imagine a compound state among Beijing, Hong Kong, or Taipei, and so on, right? And which is different from the relation with say, foreign country in terms of the nation state. You have intimate network of states together, but somehow they also have relative autonomy. Something along these lines, but working together. And that's how I understand this sort of the simple notion of the compound state, but in reality it can be very complicated. So when Beck tried to imagine the future including to incorporate all the forms of important social movement, I think it is pointing to a possibility. But he himself actually took the lead with the negotiation with the North on the people-to-people movement or something for several years as the leader. All right? Can we? How do we do? Let me suggest we 2:30. Yes.
So you were saying, political community. It seems the stress is not on state, but on communities, and I think that's very different. So you're saying that Professor Peck, in his English version, used compound state, but you are proposing that it could also be compound political community. But I think even with the analysis, if the focus is at state level or focus on state, it's different than if focus is on communities or people. Although it is there, but I think the focus is different.
So a different kind of possibility for imagination. Right? So you can imagine the compound society and all these connected. It's like all the Mandarin speaking on the social level, on the society level. So you can discuss that. So can I suggest we kind of 3:30? It's 2:30. By then, I think Chiu will be back. So after she gave her lecture, we just open for discussion. Is that okay? Because she actually has prepared very seriously 40-some PPT. Yeah. Okay. So we stop here for a while. Then come back on 3:30.